Thanks, Seb. I'm hoping I'll put a slide on here and I will go through the answers because I can see some stuff coming through on group chat. The method mark is awarded for correct method or partial method. The P is a process mark. We got B, which is an unconditional accuracy mark. C, which was a communication, and then the A is the accuracy mark. I put that on there just while we were waiting for everybody to join us. I will do a little bit of an introduction to myself, but before I do that, I should just, in terms of the way this system presentation manager, the webcast thing works, is that there's a few seconds delay between what I'm saying, I say it, and then you hear it a few seconds later. So it might appear that I'm just waiting for the slides to catch up, or for me to catch up with the slides. And you will notice I am in school, so there are people that will occasionally stick their head round the classroom, but hopefully they won't. So this session is all about mark schemes, particularly, and I'm looking at some of the November 21 exemplar student responses, or the kind of responses we would expect from a student. So there's a couple of questions I pulled from summer 19, which was our last full summer papers that we did with a full cohort, just to deal with a couple of the major marking queries that I get. And as we go into mocks, and you see them all over social media, where people are pleading for, can you just check this, can you just check that for me? And I just wanted to pick out some pertinent ones. So I think it is important that you get your head round, and I think it's quite tough for people sometimes that I work in a school. We've worked at a school that went on to win Most Improved School. The massive thing for me, all that's lovely, being all those accolades, is that I'm a teacher and I'm actually sat in my classroom, and I'm just going to move the camera around so that you can see my classroom is a very big room, because we teach, our speciality, myself and Christian, I never call him Christian, Seago, our speciality is those grade 3, 4, 5s, and at the minute we're teaching 2 super groups in year 11, where we've, on 2 sides of the year group, those students that we need to get the grade 4 or 5 out of, and we're teaching very, very large groups. So we are teachers. I put this on here, and we've used this quite a lot, and you might want to make your PowerPoint, the view bigger so you can see it. Why is it important we understand mark schemes? The mark scheme goes through a process where they're put together, but they do get adjusted before they get published out to us. And it is really important that when it comes to looking at reviewing your scripts and using Script Viewer, or the papers, if you do use another board, a Script Viewer is phenomenal. But being able to look and think about, can I get these kids over the line? Ideally, we know we wouldn't need to request reviews and appeals. But this was one, and it was from a paper, and most of you at some point that have been around the block a bit will have marked this question and remember it. And I remember it thinking, that number 8, question 18, was easy. I was able to give 1 mark. And when you look at it, this actually went to appeal where a student that was 1 mark off a grade 4, and this question was appealed rather than just reviewed. It went to the next stage. And it came back, and we've had the permission from the student to share this, that actually, because their student had written the 15, 20, 25 on the answer line, with no previous work in, the M1 could not be awarded. Whether we agree with it or not, that's the reality, is that if we understand the mark schemes really well, A, we might not get the students' hopes up, but also, for me, knowing that I may have been given 1 mark away and giving students that extra little bit of comfort that they're 1 mark closer to the grade 4, made me feel a little bit, I shouldn't have done that. So I started then making sure that I go through the mark schemes before I start my marking. And it is important we understand the intricacies of it. Some of you, it will be like, this is going to be like teaching your grandmother to suck eggs, so I do apologise if you feel like that, and I hope you don't. So at the start of the mark scheme, you will see general marking guidance. It's the kind of thing you flick over and go, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. And I'm just going to show you hone in on a couple of them, the biggies, that some of you may already have these questions. Okay, so what if I get an answer and there's no working out? Do I still want to award the marks? I'm going to, at this point, there is a difference between what I would expect in an exam sitting for a formal external exam and the way we would mark internally. This is something that you, with your department, your head of department, so this is my little health warning, that you might choose to do something within your own department that goes against the mark scheme because you want to do whatever your motivation might be. Our policy for internal mocks is that even if working is not required, and so the question does not say show all your working, and the answer, you'll see in a minute and I'll talk through a bit, is that we've made the decision that we will not award full marks as they would get in the full exam internally. But we do know that there's a different set of outcomes that would happen in an external exam. We do this for a number of reasons. One is that we want students to show their working, obviously, but more importantly is that we need to, any extra marks they get over and above what we have declared or we have marked at that point and gone, no, you get one for the answer, but you've shown no working. And it sounds really harsh, very contentious, but it does get students over that finish line. It's about having high expectations and setting the bar high. We do know it's different in the real thing, but these are just our guidelines. And sometimes students will come and say, the mark scheme says this, and in reality, we will then explain to the student that why we have made the call. And as long as all teachers are consistent, it doesn't become a contentious thing as long as you agree with it, your department. The one I use as the real analogy on this, I suppose, is where we also diverge from the mark scheme, is something like a line of best fit on a scatter graph where you're being asked to estimate the value using your line, and it'll say, use your graph to estimate the value of a car that's 7 years old. And the mark scheme will say, if it's between 14 and 17,000, they get the 2 marks. We will not award the marks unless there is a line of best fit. Because we know, again, it's encouraging this best practice that even if they misread it, a line of best fit will get them 1 of the 2 marks. So we're almost saying, look, even if you get the answer wrong, we can guarantee you 1 mark with a line of best fit. So it's all those kind of little bit of intricacies that we've developed over the years of working together. But again, it's having that consistency across the whole department so that students are not unfairly dealt with within one class. The other thing to be aware of, and I'm going to show you some examples of these in a minute, it's about incorrect method. This is the harsh one where you know they go, the answer's 4, I've got there, and yet their working clearly shows that they wouldn't have got there, because students will argue, go, yeah, but I didn't cross all my working out and I still came to the right answer. This is one where, in my early career, I would always refer to my head of department and say, what do you want me to do about this? You will see within some of the marking, when you do use Script Viewer, hopefully next summer, that some markers and some team leaders, for some of the more trickier questions, will annotate the students' responses, showing where they're allocating those marks. And this would be one where, now, having been around a bit, I will go through one of those multi-step questions and I'll annotate saying, I'm giving your M1 here for 50 divided by 5, not because you've got the answer, I'm giving it to you there. And that's quite good practice, but you do see some scripts come up where they've got M1, P1, and that's worth looking out for as well, just to show that you can see where the marks have clearly been given. The other one, this is the pain in the bum that nobody likes dealing with, is the follow-through marks. So, again, we might, at this stage, look and think, actually, for every one of these where you're having to work it through, the benefit to the students, I could just give them 1, because I know that there is a process mark there to be had, but they've lost everything else. I know that then anything they get in the real thing from follow-through marks, their Brucey bonuses to them come the summer. It sounds harsh, but it's just so you are aware that what we do in class and internally is different to the real thing. A couple of other things is about ignoring significant work. You might see that annotated as ISW. Linear equations, interesting one that might be worth thinking about when you're teaching solving linear equations. Some students, and you'll know them, you'll go, yeah, I know that student. They will do, say, 4x plus 4x minus 4 equals whatever, and they work it out by embedding the answer. And 9 times out of 10 in class, the students that got really strong number skills will get it right, which is brilliant for that specific question. And embedded answers where they write 4 times 5 plus 4 equals, and you can award the marks. We will not do that internally, because what we want to do is we want to encourage students to follow the process, where they have to be seen to be adding for both sides. Really harsh when you get to know your students, that when they write add 4 to one side, you know what they're doing is that they're adding 4 to both sides. But when it comes to the real thing, they have to make it really clear that they are adding 4 to both sides. They are dividing by 3 on whatever the integer values are, or that they're dividing by those numbers to both sides. So we make that clear that, yeah, I get it, you're really good with your number, brilliant, but what's the method? And it's just worth pointing that out again, because it might be a fraction as an answer, and it's not something they can embed 3.2, whereas they can get some method marks by doing the same thing to both sides of the equation. Just worth thinking about that when it comes to talking about it. And then inverted commas, this is where we need to look for their answer being followed through. Misreads, generally, internally, we tend to ignore any misreads, but again, it's worth knowing about to know that it does get taken into account. And there's a difference between a misread and a miscopy. I've seen a miscopy this week with a remark that I just looked at for an appeal that we're potentially putting in. And again, if any doubts, talk to your head of department and make sure that they're happy with that, that it's not just about, I suppose the summary is, it's not just about marking according to the mark scheme, it's marking according to how your head of department or school policy, how close to that do you want, and can you get that consistency across the department. So the abbreviations for those will be there, again, listed in the front of the guidance, the mark scheme. And I've already mentioned the mark scheme goes through a couple of stages. The one I'm using in this presentation isn't the final mark scheme. So if you're sat there with the documents that were sent out, hopefully you got hold of, if you haven't, you will find that the mark scheme is different to the final published one that came out for the final papers in November. And I've decided to leave it because it is about, it's meant to be for training, not necessarily training specifically for those papers. Whilst we've used the November papers as examples, bring them up to date, the mark scheme may be slightly different. We're talking about a couple of minor changes, but I quite like that to show that it has gone through that process of evaluation where they do have to, the chief examiner or the examining team do go back and finalise that mark scheme, having moderated however many thousand of responses that they see during the initial marking phase. And then it gets adjusted. What's the kind of responses? Where are the misconceptions? Are we being too harsh on the initial, or are we being too lenient? So there is a couple, but I think there's a couple of B marks that are different. The process mark was brought out back in 2017. And I'm smirking to myself at this point, is that it's a Ponzi method mark. It is a dressed up method mark. It works exactly in the same way. There is no change. The only difference is that it is specifically there for AO3 questions. I could talk to you about assessment objectives, AO1, AO2, AO3, but I could bore the pants off you. And basically AO3 is assessment objective 3 on the GCSE spec, of which there has to be a certain percentage of questions. So in order to mark those questions, a new marking code was brought in, a process mark, that is only for these problem-solving questions, and it is there more as an indication to the marker, the teacher, that to look out for alternative solutions. Generally, it doesn't require a method. No, back up. It is, oh, excuse me. So it works in the same way as a method mark, but it's meant to be that you've got to be aware that not all of the methods will be in the mark scheme. Again, and we had one where it was a really bizarre method that a grade 8 student a few years ago had done, and it was a question 20, a higher tier question, and he'd gone a really, really bizarre way around it, but he got the final answer, and there was nothing wrong with his method, but if you'd looked at it, you would have said, I don't understand it. And we actually was able to appeal, so it's just to flag up, not all the methods are going to be laid out there. There may be some, what's the word I'm thinking of? That's why I'm stumbling. Unconventional. Just to look out for there. And this one is where it does require a method, but it will also say you must show your working. So anywhere that's required a method, it will always say, let's make that clear as well. Where it's not required, it won't say you must show your working. So I'll go back to that one. So where working is not required, externally, it will get the full marks. Internally, you may decide to do something different. Given this time last year that we were looking at tags, we were very, very strict about marking according to the mark scheme, because we had to be, because of the circumstances we were under. We may get to the point come March where for their final mocks where we will be a bit more rigid. For their first set of mocks in December, we did set the bar high so we could say you need to do some more work. It will clearly say where working is required. So it will also either say show your working or show that. And again, in terms of the external exams, the correct answer with no working will get no marks, but within, so internally, the same thing applies because obviously you want working on everything. But just be careful about, there's a couple there where prove. And I know I'm just trying to pull one out of the air where you think, are they going to need to, well, they will because a proof is a proof. You'll see in a minute. Inverted commas, it cannot be any number. It must come from a correct method. So they can't just, I don't know, if there was a question about calculating the cost of paint and they couldn't work out the area of a cylinder that needed to be painted. They can't say, oh, let's say the surface area of the cylinder is 27. They have to have had a method that works and have just got the wrong answer in order to be able to use those quote marks, commas, quote marks. I'll put this in there. This was from 2019, just about the eligibility. Same thing, time and time again. Students crossing out work or not crossing out work. The eligibility seems to be declining, or had done up till 2019. Whilst we shouldn't discourage them from having multiple attempts, they do need to make it clear about which work should be marked. We've just had a student that we've been looking at some papers that she's done, and there's a couple of times where she has actually crossed out incorrect answers and replaced it with incorrect working. any work that is crossed out and not replaced can be marked. Again, different rules internally to external exams, but any work that is crossed out and replaced cannot be marked. Worth saying that to students about, unless you're going to replace it, don't cross it out. So this is a prime example of where, and these, you'll see in your pack that you've got, so this is from 2019, just to sum up. You look at that, there's clearly no methods, but the answer is right. Because this is the biggest question we get asked. There's no method, they've written 3,000, do they get the marks? It doesn't say you must show your work, it just says work out. There is no method, but the answer is correct, and we assume, it is implied, that they will get all of those 4 marks, if that makes sense. Again, internal, external, that whole discussion you will have. Then the second one, I'm going to open up to people. Got people just having a look there in the group chat. On this one, what would people award? People want to put in the group chat rather than the Q&A. I know there's a delay. Okay, 2s and 3s coming through. It is interesting. Okay. I'm just going to close the Q&A because I know Seb's dealing with the Q&As. So this question specifically is about Harry and planning for his holiday. Got 3 out of 4, and it's a nice exercise to do to take these slides and go through with other people and say, where are you actually awarded? And you'll see in a minute where they get awarded. And I'm hoping you haven't cheated and printed off the answers as well. And so they evaluated the cost for 4 people. So and the spending money for 4 people. They were then able to deal with the cost of the hotel for 4 people for 7 nights. But they added in an extra cost when it came to adding it all together. So they were able to get 3 of the 4 marks, but they couldn't get that final accuracy mark. When we get into these 4-mark questions, very early on, I used to, and I've said before, even online marking, when you're doing formal marking, for a tricky question, I would still literally go through and write on the script, the student's paper, where I'm awarding those marks. I wouldn't do it for every question, but for some of these multi-mark questions. Then we've got this one, very quickly. I think this is the last one until we get to the November papers. So Harry Plant 2, or 1, interesting. Katie 2, Matt 2. The 2, they correctly calculated the cost of the travel for the 4 people, so they did the 4 times 150, so they got P1 there. And it is worth, for those total newbies, they get the 1 mark at the point at which they have written 4 times 150. That process mark, the answer in brackets, is almost irrelevant. It is the 4 times 150 that has given them the P1. Or the site of 600, you can imply that they got the 600 by doing 4 times 150. They then worked out the cost, the spending money, the cost of the hotel for 7 nights for one person was the 350. But then their addition did not include was not 2 correct costs, which is really harsh. But it had to be at least 2, and it had to be the correct cost. And if you look at the additional column there, it says maybe 2 correct costs, so they were only able to get 2 out of 4. So looking at that right-hand column is really useful. Sometimes you forget to, and you have to go back. What I find with the mark scheme, and this is more of a practical tip, is that I will mark a paper with the mark scheme, and on a one-side piece of A4, boxes where you've got left-hand page, I'm just trying to think, left-hand page, right-hand page, and literally right in there. So this one might go 4 times, it might say 600, 1, 1,000 is 1, 400 is 1. So know that when you're marking a vast number, what numbers you're looking for or what calculations. But between it might say 600 or 1,000 or 400 is 1. Then the next one might be 350 or 200 is the second one. And then, because when you're marking it double page, it's just a little bit, and then the next one is next little box down, and try to get on one sheet of A4. If they had put 600 plus 350 equals 950, if they'd been, yes, potentially, if they had gained the 2 marks. No, because the 600 plus the 350 wouldn't have got them, because it needs to be the cost for 4 people. So they needed to have had the 350 is only for 1 person. So they needed to have worked out the cost of the hotel for 4 people. Whereas they've only got the hotel for 1 person. So they needed it to be the correct cost for 4 people for 7 nights, is why they couldn't do the 600 and the 350. It's because that hotel, yes, it's because it's the cost of 4 people, not 1. That makes sense? I'm hoping it does. Very, very subtly, and you almost think, I need to mark some scripts to get my head around it, so as to why. So what we've got now, and that's just hopefully just trying to, because I want to get initially, because the big query is, no working, do they get the final accuracy mark? Generally they do, unless it says you must show you're working. I am going to try to answer the questions as we go along. So what we've got now coming up is, these were on a pack that should have been sent to you, or you can, yes, so the examples were, these initial examples are not. These were just for me to deal with some of the big queries about the working, showing working, not showing working. The next load of 50-odd slides, which we may not get through today. Helen, brilliant practice saying we write P1 next to the marks given. Brilliant. Great practice to do, especially on the multi-step questions. Wouldn't do it for everything, just because otherwise it becomes time intensive. So the next slides we're looking at are specifically the November 21 papers. They are emailed they were emailed to you if you booked in before yesterday, I believe. So I think she sent them out this morning. Anybody up till this morning would have got. Otherwise, it should be in the resource, I'm just going to say thing, to download. Do not skip to the end where all the answers are. And I've tried to put the student responses along with the question and the marks in quite easily for you to view, but also so you can see on the screen. If we don't get time to get through them all, because there's a combination of higher questions, foundation questions, and crossover questions, you can do them at your own leisure. I know. How nice am I? Yeah, you can go and do some recreational maths. So these ones coming on now from November 21. The other ones are from summer 19, just because I thought they were really nice examples of show your working, don't show your working. And then these ones are November 2021. It was, and I am literally going to give you, I'm hoping some of you have had a go. November 21, it was paper 1F, question 9. There's the question, there's the student's response, or somebody's handwriting of a student's response. So the correct answer we're looking for is either £3.50 or £9.80. If people want to tell me what they gave for that, don't skip to the end. I am literally, because there's so many of these to get through, I'll sort of give, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds for people to look at it, wait for some responses to come through, and then I'll show you. Brilliant. Yeah, start to come through. I do know there's a delay. It's interesting that we get different responses. And I'll show you where, as you'll see now with the annotation, where the marks could be awarded. So P1, because they've added all three costs. P0, because the second one is not a complete method, because they've only taken away, they only added three costs, not four costs. And then their answer is wrong because they weren't able, that the evidence that was provided is incorrect. So I had a student today say, so if there was a question about exterior angles, and it was, is he right, is he wrong? And one student said, can I just say no? Or he's not, he's incorrect. And I said, you've got a 50-50 chance. Do you think for gateway qualification, like GCSE, we're going to award you a mark for a 50-50 chance? You have to give your evidence. So the communication or the answer mark there that comes from no, it has to be supported by correct figures. In which case, Richard, so why put it? Interesting question. So from Sarah, it does say for complete correct method. So in order to get that second, yeah, some of you are answering the questions for everybody else there. The complete, it needed to be complete, it needed to have two lots of £2.30 being added. They may have then got a wrong answer, which is where the £6.50 in quote marks comes from. So, but in order so we wouldn't award it for 10 minus £4.20 because £4.20 didn't come from a complete method. But if they put 120 plus 70 plus 230 plus 230, had a brain fart, technical term, and then written £6.60 because they'd done that calculation wrong, 10 minus £6.60 could have gotten the second mark, because their £6.60 came from an arithmetic error, not because they hadn't, it's because they had tried to add four numbers. In this case, they're only adding three numbers. I'm hoping that makes sense. But you can go back through the slides at your leisure. My email address is at the end, and I'm happy to help to support people. So then the next one, good, thank you. Somebody said it does make sense. I'm hoping that's what it means. It does make sense. So the second response, we got two lots of £2.30, which they've added. They've then got I'm hoping some of these questions, as we go through, that the student responses we've chosen will answer some of the questions that you're initially asking. So we've got £6.70. Oh yeah, there we go. Prime example. Brill. And I think this is what happened last time. Everybody went, yeah, you're answering my questions, and you're just too fast for me, trying to preempt it. Brilliant. So P1, adding at least 3 costs. There you go. P1, it's a complete method due to the £6.50 because they were added. It was a correct method because they'd added the full costs. Because it's at this point, I'm waving my mouse around. At 10 minus £6.70, that is the £6.50, because their method is correct. They've just messed it. What have they done there? 2 times £2.30 is £4.80. It's £4.60. So you can see where that £4.80 has come from. It is that the £4.80 has clearly come from 2 lots of £2.30. Yeah, there's working out the change and then not actually answering the question. The question is he right? Is he wrong? Is he correct? Is there enough? Yes, there is. No, there's not. Those communication marks. I always pointed out that students, and we know our students really well, and this is where we have to disconnect. I know what he means, but you won't be marking his real thing. And we have got to train them. We've got to do the right thing by the students by training them that, yeah, where do we draw the line? And then they've got the incorrect figure at the end. It's £4.30, which penalises them for an earlier accuracy mark, but it's not penalising them at the point where they calculated £4.60. It's penalising them at the end, rightfully so. So we're seeing that accuracy mark being taken at the end rather than at the 2 lots of £2.30. Yeah, you can just, as long as you're saying no, and it's clear, we always advise students, so the ones that drive me absolutely nuts is which bank is, or which is the better deal, and they think that circling the best deal is enough, and we now say no, you have to write a sentence, because back in 2000 and sometime, 10, there was the quality of written communication mark that was brought in. So this is where the C1 mark comes from. It was essentially brought in as to assess their written communication. So we do try to say to them that, what's your answer then? Is he right or is he wrong? So I will always say, again, internal, external, write a sentence internally. Let's train them to do it properly. Right, next one for this same question, literally 30 seconds. I think this is, again, this is answering exactly like it did before, answers lots of the questions that you've already asked me. So we've got P1, A0. And how easy do we, and we will see that time and time again. P1 adding 3 costs, P1 complete method, A0, no conclusion. Struggling to say the word. Time and time again, the easy marks. You've done all of that work and then not brought it together. Yeah, didn't say no. And it doesn't have to be written as money when they're doing the adding up. Let's try a think there might be one, oh there you go, one more of these. Yeah, then we move on to a different question. So they've done it slightly different, so they've done it by taking away the costs. I like the fact that people are putting it in as P1, P1A naught. Does that show I'm a real nerd? Because I'd literally just do the same. Be careful about that final accuracy mark. 10 minus 120 is definitely 880. 880 take away 70 is definitely 810. 810 take away 230 is not £5.80. Is that where they've made the mistake? 610. Yeah. So that's where they've made their mistake, but they have actually got, it's clear where the £6.80's come from, that they're then subsequently taking off another 230, but they haven't, so they have said no, the method is correct, the second P mark, they've what's the word I'm thinking of? Yes, so now, again, you look at the marks, you know with correct figures. So it should be £5.80, but it's clear where it's come from. So it's clear that that £6.80 has come from a previous deduction, and it's just an arithmetic error, and it would be unfair because the method is correct. It would be unfair to penalise this student for an arithmetic error twice because they haven't been able to show the £4.50 or the £3.50, and they've shown £4.50. So 2 marks there. Again, all of these, and I know that we may not get time to go through them, your PDF that was sent out or is in the resource thing has got all the solutions at the end. I just think it's interesting seeing people's responses as well. So it subtracts 2 costs, complete method, but got incorrect figures. But the no would have been sufficient. Then we get on to some nice angle stuff. Again, paper 2F, question 13. We didn't choose every question to go through, because I think it would be death by mark scheme. But just more picking out, try to pick out one of each type of marking code and what to look for, and the common questions. So work out the value of X. And part II was to give a valid reason. So you're looking for part I, M1A1, they've got the correct answer, so we can imply the correct method. So that's M1A1. And then the reasons given in there, again, we know our students, and we know that the fact that they've done that working out, it's C0 because it's given a reason. And in their head, oh, the reason is it's 180, but why is it 180? It's probably the biggest frustration for most of us about those angle questions. And I think they're really hard for the multi-step questions to get all the marks on for some students. But this is one, yeah, exactly 180 is listed, but what does it mean? Where's the 180 come from? What you're doing is you're showing me your method. So they're C0. It would be C0 for part 2. Another student's response. Yeah, so Irina, has said about the keywords have changed. There is a document on the Emporium somewhere, but it is those keywords. It used to be a bit of a bone of contention. Angles on a straight line equal 180, add up to 180. Yes, it's good enough. The keywords is definitely the underlined words that you're looking for. And there used to be a document on the Emporium that had exemplars of what was acceptable and unacceptable. And the one that has changed very recently is vertically opposite angle, and I'm doing this with my fingers, vertically opposite angles are equal. Vertical used to be a requirement, and I believe the most recent one I've seen of those vertical wasn't on there, it was just opposite angles. So they have changed over time, but it's quite explicit. So if we look at this one again, M1's correct method, A0, wrong answer. C0 is wrong. What adds up to 180? Again, this is one where the student will go, but it's obvious, it's a straight, well, is it obvious? You have to assume that whoever is marking this hasn't got a clue what you're talking about, doesn't even know what the question is, and you have to tell them the angles on a straight line add up to or equal 180. They haven't mentioned a line, they haven't mentioned an angle. Next response. Obviously, we've taken the students' responses and it is the same handwriting, I know you'll say. Well, I would say if I was sat there, if I was you. $360 minus... Oh, okay. That's an interesting one. Yeah, because you're assuming that they're vertically opposite angles. Yeah, interesting. Students do insist on using 360 for angles, straight lines. But I see it, lots of response coming through. M1 is a correct method. I think it'd be quite unusual for students. I would be more likely to internally suggest that I would have liked to have seen that saying 360 minus 180 minus 75 minus 84. I'd be a bit better with that, I suppose. But their answer's incorrect. So the spirit of marking is that we're not there to take marks. Well, we are there to take marks for you. Is that it's about rewarding students for what they can do. And then we've got C0, really harsh, because there is no mention of angles on a straight line. I suppose, if I think about trying to penalise, why we would do this, again, internal, external, two different things. If we think about, I may penalise a student, or they may feel that I'm penalising a student. No, there's an old document that Graham Cumming put together about keywords. I will dig it out and I'll get it, either put it somewhere on Twitter or I will look at that document. The keywords and about, I would rather they made the mistake here and now. And there is part of me that the mathematics, okay, Tiffany, you're all right. If they put angles on a straight line add up to 180, would you still give the C1? Yeah, I would imagine that students for this question may not have used that response, that reason. if they could, got the first part, but used the, somebody's found the, yeah, it's not a command word, it's something about, sorry, they used angles around a point. It doesn't necessarily need to be the reason. I would have expected students on this to have written angles round a point equals 360. And let's be honest, anybody that's gone through that, I think it would be quite unusual. But I would still be looking for angles around a point. But externally, in a real thing, it would be one that you would refer to your line manager. Potentially, Tom, as to asking them to extend the lines. I think it can be implied because they've then divided it by 2, so there is an understanding that they're dealing with 360, but they know they're going to end up, if they hadn't divided it by 2 at the end, potentially not. This may not have included what we've seen as a student's response. Why is 180 not underlined? I don't know. It will change from mark scheme to mark scheme as well. And it may have been underlined on the final version. So this was done before the final version was finalised. Because that's what happens with final version. As 180 does the green sign, does this mean angles? Yes. No, it's really, I know we'd want to go, well, 180 degrees obviously means it's a straight line, or it means the word angles. It doesn't. We are explicitly looking for angles because degrees is a measure of an angle. And there's all sorts of discussions you can have about how fair or unfair. You have to get to the point where you go, this is the reality. And there is part of me mathematically that wants to say, actually, surely I would want my students to say, actually, it's angles that meet at a point on a straight line add up to 180. Wouldn't we all mathematically love students to say that? Because it's not angles on a straight line, it's angles that meet at a point. But how far do we push it? And it's about encouraging students to get that right the first time. Internally, lower down the school when it's not a high stakes exam, I may force the issue to say, no, the real reason is that it has to meet at a point on a straight line, and it's harsh. And it comes back to that, anything they get in the real thing is a Brucey bonus. So then, another student's response, we're looking at angles, add up. So we haven't got a correct answer, we've got no method, but we do have the words angles and line. Well, so again, M naught, A naught, and then allowed the C1. So the C1 is regardless of their previous work. Brill. Bang on. We've got Karina spending £300 on books. Question there, student's response. So this will take a couple of minutes for this to come through. A couple of seconds. Yeah, brilliant. Seeing lots of good responses there. Oh, I've turned that on silent. Again, you look at that and you go P1, A1, and then the final answer is they can only get 61 books. They can't get 62, so they can't get that final accuracy mark. Next one, coming through to you, Karina. And it says 300 divided by 4.85. Yep, 1. Yep, brilliant. I think that one's quite straightforward. P1, A0. Just going to close the door behind me. A0. There you go. Next one. Just answer on the line. If they put 61 on the answer... Oh, the things are going so fast. If they put 61 on the answer line... Can't find you now. Yeah, there you go. 61 on the answer line. It doesn't say show your working. It's just 61. Again, internal, external. This might be one where I'm saying, so it's 61. Where's your working out? So in the exam, they would get all 3 marks because it doesn't say full marks. We imply all their working out. Thanks, Ria. So we can imply full marks because it doesn't say show all your working out. All 3. They're only looking for not getting those method or process marks where it says show your working out. So again, 61. He's using a build-up method, I suppose. Yep. Do we discuss honestly that they get 3 or 4 marks? Potentially. It depends on the students. If it was a higher attainage group, but it generally doesn't come up because the kind of different groups of students will go off and discuss will find mark schemes, and then others won't. Sometimes we'll have a discussion with parents, and the parents will always agree about having high expectations, and I'll never apologise for having that. So again, 3 marks, I think. P1, A1, A1. Right, we've got 3 kilos of carrots. I've put the response there. There's potentially 4 marks. And whilst they haven't used 1.8 divided by 3, well they have, but they've then put it as 60, it is the 1.8 divided by 3 that's given them the marks, not the 60. Well, the 60 is nothing wrong, but arithmetically, it's not correct, whilst it's 60p. We know what they mean. P1, P0, P1, A0. Interestingly, it's worth looking at that 3rd process mark. You'll see in a minute, this is going to answer some of the other questions. So this one, we would have ordered, it's the 1.8 divided by 3 for the cost of 1 kilo. The P0 here, 345 because they've only taken away the 1 kilo of potatoes. They can then get the cost of the 4 kilos. But that's the P1 that I've just clicked on there, the P1 cost of 4 kilo carrots. That's the or section of the first P1. Or for a process to find the cost of 4 kilos of carrots. So then they've got the ability, then we've got A0 because their answer is incorrect. If that makes sense. So potentially 2. Yeah, which is what loads of you, brilliant. Well done, guys. So if I can talk to my year 10s. Oh, I clicked too fast then. Just really conscious that there's loads of slides. Can't believe I put so many together. You've got 180 divided by 3. Made a mistake. They've then tried to, or worked out the cost of 2 kilos. To get the correct, or to get a cost of 1 kilo of potatoes. There is a complete process, but their final answer is incorrect. Brilliant. Most of you are agreeing with this. So if you're getting these right, why are you here? Brill. You're agreeing. Sometimes it's the or bits that catch you out because you don't look past that. Brill. Right, next one. This is again still paper. Oh, question 1, paper 1, question 17. We've got the Heidi making biscuits. So I'm hoping I'll move back to that's the question where she has to work out the greatest number of biscuits, and then you'll see her response, or the response we got here. Yes, version's slightly different. Okay. Is that the mark scheme that's slightly different? This is the one where the mark scheme is different if you're using the actual mark scheme that was published. Mine was on a what's the word? It was a moderation mark scheme. Not moderation, is a word. It'll come to me. So you might have a slightly different mark scheme. But if you're looking at the documents, or the document these on, it should be the same. Oh, okay. No all sections. Okay. Which is interesting because the or sections will be part of what is more detailed. So even if you're not given, if the public version doesn't include the or sections, it's worth doing as a team, going, all right, or we're going to allow this. Thank you for that. I will change that, or look at why. They've got the batches for 1 ingredient, always going to get 1 mark for 1 ingredient on recipes. They're able to work out the batches for all ingredients. They then worked out the number of biscuits, got to 150 because they've added them together. So rather than come to the conclusion that, got to do that again, they've added them together rather than just made the conclusion that the number of biscuits was, just trying to think, was 42, because that's the maximum number of biscuits. Such a shame when it's the understanding. Then it's slightly different, have they? No, 400 or 12. Yes, they've almost, with the second example here, they've got the batches for 1 ingredient. So Kerry's asking, do they get penalised for the incorrect use of the equals? Are we talking about, as in the previous question, with chained? No, not in that case. Where is it chained calculation? No. I'm sorry, I've had to flick back to the question. So where it's a chain calculation, no. So then this one is P1. They got the batches for 1. So they're then going to get the batches for all ingredients. They get the second. Then they've done the correct or they've done a calculation to find the number of biscuits. But the calculation is correct. The 3.5 times 12 is correct, but they've got their final answer wrong. very common multiplying by 0.5s often come out with the incorrect answer. That one's A0 because the answer is 42. If you look up the top left, the answer is 42, not 38. So it's that final accuracy mark they've lost there. Quite an unconventional method in terms of laying this out because there's not a great deal of explanation, and you have to sort of dig around to think, well, what are they doing? Well, it's a ratio table of some sort where they're building it up, 12, 24, 36 for each of the ingredients, 200, 400, 600. Again, so they've got the amount for one ingredient. Well, they start to build it up for all ingredients, building it up to 3 batches. Is there a method there to find the number of biscuits? Yeah, I suppose they've got to 36. And you look at the ores there where it's got 3 times 12 is 36. So they are looking at the price, finding the nut. There is a process, but again, their final numbers, they haven't seen it through. I think the process mark is, sometimes some people will try to explain it to students that it's not as strict as a method mark. It's almost, you've got a right process. So then that's A0. Then the last one on this is, give you 10 seconds just to catch up with me. 125 divided by 12. And then I'm not quite sure where they're going from there. Good. So then we've got 1, because they found the amount for one ingredient. They haven't considered all the ingredients, they're just looking at 1. And then the third mark was dependent on them getting 2 marks previously, and then there was A0, because there is no answer. They just stopped. Well. There is a straight line graph, quite an interesting one for straight line graphs. There's a tolerance about drawing the lines when they have to join them, as you'll see in a minute. So we've got drawing a straight line for the values. But it's not a complete, so they need to have drawn it from -1 to from -2 to 3. If they don't extend it, and we used to, so if you look at the B1 down the bottom, the B2, create straight line segment through at least 3 of the points. So it's at least 3 of the points. Very, very clear. There is a tolerance when it's the 10 mil, the 1 centimetre 10 mil squares. I think it used to be half plus or minus half a square, which is quite hard to see. Then we've got, so I used to tell them to extend it as far as they can in straight line. Quite a common one, where it tips up because they've messed up with the negative values. And you almost get a feel for it, whether or not, oh, it's 1, 2 or 3 marks. So we know there's at least 3 points on the left, and we are ignoring 2 of the 3 points. So they can still get 2 marks, which I think it is very positively marked. Again, difference between internal and external. B2, brilliant. Excellent. Then the next one, we have it going through -2, clearly going through -2. But what they've done is they've not read the scale correctly. Because they're assuming that the x-axis goes across in ones. Each box is 1 rather than it being each 2 boxes is 1. So what we do, again, if you look at the second point there, for a single line drawn with a positive gradient, it's clearly, and it tells you a gradient of 2, or an intention to use a gradient of 2. Quite difficult to see whether or not there is an intention in this case. Sometimes you will see it all go across, and you'll almost see a little arrow going across 1, up 2, across 1, up 2. So that would get 2, because we're saying this is a clear enough attempt at using a gradient of 2. But it does go, just going through -2 is enough, Serena, there. I might be tempted with my students to say that actually it's a positive gradient, it's going through -2, I'm going to give you B1, anything they get in the real thing is a Brucey bonus. Keeps coming back to that phrase. And then D, interesting one, that we have some points that are plotted. We have 1 and 0, 2 and 2, 3 and 4, -1 and -4, -2 and 6. We have our correct points plotted. If they do not join it up, they still get 2 points for giving the correct points. Again, what you do internally, but from a real thing, B2, B3, and tell, yeah, I will tell mine. Internally, we might do a different thing. It's about encouraging that best practice. And sometimes, unless you've seen that, you go, well, I'm not giving them any marks. It's not a graph. My proviso and my health warning, so all of this is as a department, you choose to do the way to adapt the scheme of work, or the, not scheme of work, the mark scheme. But bear in mind that last year we were doing tags and CAGs, and so we did want to be as accurate as we could. Just really conscious then about how long this has taken. Last time I did it, it did take me a lot longer. There is lots for people to go through. This question 2F, question 19, calculator paper. That's the question there, and then we've got a question and response. We've got a 240, we've got a 600 divided by 4 equals 150, but then they've come back and gone, no, 600 minus 240. And then they're minusing 150. So they've got lots of different things going on here. So let's P1, P0, P1 for all felt. Let's see what we've got. Right, P1 for Rachel's share. P0 for Samina's share, because they actually haven't taken the 240 off. The next part, they've got Tom's share, so they're getting the 200. But because they didn't get to the 270, they got to 210, they were only able to get 2 of those marks. This is one where you would be writing, right, I can give it for that, I can't give it for that. Good practice to encourage students. We've got 2 things that you're comparing, or 3 things. Split your page into 3 vertically, that way, down the page, rather than that way, because you're working out gets confusing. Then we've got another student's response, much more not much more detail. Not different methods, but they're actually using the algorithms. And this happens a lot on a calculator paper where students still insist on working it out. They haven't then multiplied Rachel's shares, timesing that by 2. They've done the 650 divided by 5, so nothing. Samina's share is because the 150 that they've tried to use there came from a totally incorrect process. So in order to get that process, second process mark, it has to come, remember, it has to come from a correct process. They get P1 for Tom's share, because down here they've done 600 divided by 3. But it's not supported by correct method, so just P1. And you do have to go hunting for it. Then we got to some fractions. This is a crossover question where we've got, this is the working out, 2 and 7/15. It's interesting to talk, you could talk about this for hours, talking to myself, about the methods, whether or not you would always teach students to change to a top-heavy fraction, or whether you would get them to take away the whole numbers first. And it's quite an interesting discussion to be had about methods. So we then got, it is a complete method, but then they haven't dealt with the fact that they're going to end up with dealing with that 10/15 and trying to take that away. They've just seen biggest take away the smallest and ended up with the incorrect answer, as quite often happens. So it's clear what they're trying to do, because the method is, I need to do 2 and 3/15, take away 10/15. That is the method. Because they've changed it to, because they've done the 4, take away the 2 to end up with the 2. They're then going, I've got 3/15, take away 10/15, and they haven't been able to do that, or they haven't done it correctly. But it is enough. Why the second method marks? They've done the 4, take away 2. If you look at that, 4, take away 2, and that is implied by the 2. They've then got the 3/15, take away the 10/15. And that was M2 for a complete method. And it all becomes, because it's implied by the 2, all the 4 take away 2 haven't been carried out. What I'd say is, to those newbies out there, marking internally might be different, and that's what this session's about. This isn't about marking for the exam board. This is about what we will do in the classroom. And even now students will question, well, not question, point out, you've made a mistake. I'll have another mark. I'm never that, no, I'm being very glib there. It's never the end of the world at this stage. But marking for, as a contract is different. This is about marking in the classroom. Then we've got 23/15. It's the answer, there's a complete method, but, oh, Nabil says they can see it now. 23/15, it was clearly saying, giving it as a mixed number. Harsh, but true. The last question, you say they get the second P mark. Has to be the correct method, not necessarily the correct answer. I'm answering questions as I'm going along. Then we've got 8/15. It's a complete method. There is an error they've made. They are allowed 1 error. so there is a little bit of leeway. So we're not penalising them twice. In this case, they haven't written it as a mixed number because it doesn't come out as a mixed number. So they're going to lose one accuracy mark, but we will allow them, which is why you're allowed one error with it, which is quite comforting to know. I'm hoping 13 over 15. Again, we've got two fractions, at least one of which is correct. We've got 21 over 15, which is not correct. And we've got 8. So what have they done there? Oh, 21 over 5 is correct. 8 over 3 is correct. But then their conversion to the same denominator is incorrect. So we've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to keep going regardless, and hope that I'm going to finish in about 3 minutes, leaving you with the rest of the presentation. On the rest of these slides, as you'll see, I'm going to whiz through. Yeah, the conversion was wrong. Somebody's just said additional guidance includes the one error line allowed, but that's not included in the handout. Interesting. You might want to use the slides as your guidance, because the slides obviously had more guidance notes. But that's to show you the robust process that those mark schemes go through, that they're not just done and set in stone. They take into account students' responses. So you will see throughout the rest of this, there are another load of questions. And for those of you, and I'm going to push something to you right out, which is, yes, the slides will be sent through. So we then get on to higher and foundation, higher questions, looking at the quadratic formula. It's a really nice exercise to do. So then we've got paper 3 on the higher. So the slides will come through. So it's not just the foundation. It is quite a long exercise to work through. And I'm just trying to show you how far it goes to right to paper 2. Well, there's paper 3 questions, so it covers it. Hopefully we'll answer a lot to your questions as to where the marks were allocated. Excuse me. There are some additional, the previous training we did on this, and this, I think, this session, will be available to rewatch. The slides, I think, are really valuable because you can sit there and go through it step by step, as long as you've printed off the student responses. There is other resources available on the Emporium, as always. I'm hoping you found some of that useful. I'm going to reiterate, this is about what we do in the classroom, not necessarily the way they will be done. It is about using the mark scheme, but what I do is slightly different. Sometimes, depending on the context. It is hopefully give you some idea about how those mark schemes are applied in the real thing, what you may do differently with your students. I am also available if people want to. I'm just going to put my email address up there. If people want to email me questions, we are available as our part of our role with Pearson, as always. Oh, I love this bit. Can I just sit here and watch you saying thank you? I've just said that out loud, haven't I? So yeah, available. There will be loads of, it's worth working through it. Just have a massive geek fest, working through and seeing what you would have awarded and try to get your head around it. I'm hoping you've seen that the slides are a bit idiot-proof because I had to write them for me about why is that awarded, why is that, and so I tried to put them where the marks were awarded. Somebody said, what's your Twitter? Oh God, oh no. I'll stick it in the chat, I think. And I'm hoping that that's been useful to at least some of you, all of you, any of you, and I hope you enjoy your evening, and good night.